political campaign. Well, in a lot of countries, you can't do that anymore because the state now controls the media. The state censors the internet. Brazil just banned Twitter because Elon Musk refused to censor user speech. Kamala Harris says that Musk better behave himself or he will, quote, lose his
privileges and it should be taken down. They are directly speaking to millions and millions of people without any level of oversight or regulation. And that has to stop.
She thinks, and the Democratic establishment thinks, that free speech is a privilege. Well, you know and I know that it's a right. And if Kamala Harris is elected, the powers behind her will quash that right. They're already halfway there. It will be too late by 2028.
Hello all, it's James Johnson, aka Silverblade. Welcome back to my channel, welcome back to my content, and welcome back to Suzerain. So in this particular episode, well, we're jumping in where we left off in the last episode, obviously. So let's go in and start reading the reports. Manger's Brunei Region Tour. Minister of Rural Development Gus Manger is touring the Brunei region in Boran as part of his research for a new rural development plan. The tour includes several site visits and meetings with local officials and communities. This initiative indicates a proactive approach to rural development with a specific focus on understanding ground realities. Okay. Balgan farmers seek support. In Balgan, local farmers are seeking support as the city's agriculture industry is falling behind. The farmers point out that lack of access to modern farming equipment and insufficient infrastructure are major hurdles. They believe that targeted support and investment could rejuvenate the agricultural industry and contribute to the region's economy. The Needham Mining Corporation has discovered new untapped coal reserves in Mobile. The corporation suggests that investments in Lauren could significantly improve output, opening opportunities for economic growth in the region. The corporation is in the process of assessing the feasibility and potential of these reserves. Sarna is exhibiting strong potential for agricultural growth. The demands from neighboring Lesbia is increasing, suggesting an opportunity for expansion in the region's agricultural sector. The local farmers are optimistic about the future, but they also highlight the need for strategic investment and support to capitalize on this potential. Discovery of new ISM remains. Remains of the former Black Battalion members have been discovered near the site of the ISM incident. The deceased have become identified as Swordisht Armed Forces officers who were pardoned by President Sol's government and were deployed on border security at the time. Investigations are ongoing to determine the new cause and circumstance of their death. The discovery has reignited the interest in the Black Battalion's history, and authorities are urging anyone with information related to the case to come forward. Right, I think that's, well, we have news actually. EPA increase. A risky endeavor. The decision to increase the Energy Protection Act threshold to 49% by President Anton Rain has been met with criticism. Critics argue that such a drastic shift could leave Swordland's strategic energy sector exposed to the dangers of foreign influence. A risky move. The government's decision to increase the EPA protection threshold to 49% is bold, yet risky move. This change could expose our energy sector to foreign influence. EPA increased to 49%, a pathway to economic prosperity. The recent proposition to elevate the Energy Protection Act threshold to 49% merits substantial contemplation. This potential change doesn't just shift a number, it opens doors for Swordland's economic paving the way for global collaboration and potential prosperity. While detractors may protest, the economic data suggests that a higher foreign ownership limit can drive economic growth, innovation, and healthy competition, vital for the robust functioning of a free market economy. Alright, we've seen the news. So, budget allocation of the government of Swordland. The budget. Now this is scary. There's all the people that want money. I'd like to use this opportunity for a statement. Of course, sir. Each and every one of you is very capable, but it's what we do as a team that counts. We are doing great work, and this is just the beginning. There will be many more things that come. Years ago, all of us gathered to change the course of history. Now I'm proud of what we've achieved and what is to come. Now, each and every one of you is very capable, but it's what we do as a team that counts. The ministers weren't as motivated by my statement as I had hoped. Thank you, sir. Moving on. Sadly, Peter Vector and Gus Manger and David Whiskey won't be attending this meeting. They are working on the upcoming trade agreement with Wayland and Agnolia. May the Lord be with them. Clara gave a barely disguised eye roll. Did you just roll your eyes at me, young lady? If I did, it's because religion has no place at a government budget meeting. I was merely expressing my wish for a successful trade deal. Freedom of expression must be protected at all costs, must it not, Miss Morgana? Actually, in this case, I agree with Miss Walda. According to Swordland's laws regarding the separation of church and state, she broke off as she noticed that Simon, Lucian, and Iosif were looking at the three female ministers in stony silence. Ladies, let's leave the extraneous chit-chat for afternoon tea. Not gonna make a sign. Let's begin, Mr. Hall. Gladly. Today's a big day. We must prioritize our spending wisely in order to achieve the goals we set as a government. While maintaining enough political support, it may add promises were made during the election. There are three options regarding the budgeting of the four main branches of government. It's either we increase, maintain, or decrease the funding. Increasing will result in an improvement of the branch, which will unlock new policy options. Maintaining will keep the funding, resulting in no visible change. Decreasing causes a loss of efficiency in that branch. The problem isn't the amount of money spent, it's how efficiently we spend it. It's true that many of our policies could be far better implemented. Our welfare systems are full of issues that need to be addressed, for instance. We have to be careful as to what we fund, so we have resources remaining for another investment project. We have to keep true to the election promises. Our people voted for us because of the promises we made. as much as we realistically can. If we fail at improving our economy, the promises don't mean much in the big picture. Before we begin our discussion, there is one more thing that I want to voice my opinion on. As we manage the government budget, we can go into debt to invest in different branches. However, under these circumstances, it would worsen the economic crisis if we push it too far. It's difficult for us to raise debt without the current unhealthy economy, but we can increase the amount of debt we can take as the economy improves. Our administration should be fiscally conservative to avoid a crash. Measures of austerity have shown difficulties in appeasing voter groups. Given the current state of the country, improving economic situation is a political priority right now, more so than ever if we want to win the '58 election. This budget will also be applied to our entire term. It is very critical that we plan correctly. Let's begin then. Which branch should we discuss first? Law enforcement. I would like to have an increase in the funding of law enforcement to increase the size of the police force and raise salaries. We have so many internal threats to tackle, and I'm already stretching my units too far thin with the limited resources allocated to me. Nia, clear your throat. Law enforcement is certainly a high priority. However, I feel tackling internal corruption is of far higher importance than increasing our police presence. Directing the funds to my department would solve the problem at its root. If corruption is still rampant, all the police in the world won't help us. We need a specialized anti-corruption police unit, which we could create if the funds were directed to me. I agree with Ms. Morgana. We should not reward a structure that is responsible for an ever-increasing number of human rights violations. Additionally, corruption is the reason of our government's inefficiencies. It needs to be tackled. The police are there to serve and protect the people of Swordland, Miss Valda, and that is exactly what we were doing. More funding will allow us to take care of our police forces. It is quite a simple choice given the current status of the country. I must also remind you that we promised to focus on security and law enforcement during our campaign. I agree with Nia. We need real solutions for real problems like corruption. Let's talk about healthcare. Our healthcare system is vast and provides free services to most of our citizens. However, the quality of our health services is far worse in low-income and rural areas. Therefore, I think that we should receive more funding to address this disparity. I agree. I've recently begun an investigation into healthcare in Narble. The numbers are not good. If we don't increase spending on health services, we are lest to maintain it. Otherwise, we are putting lives at risk. We have just started a new analysis on what would happen if a pandemic struck Swordland. According to the result, if our healthcare facilities remain in their current state, the death toll would be unimaginable. I'm not even talking about the damage to the economy. This is a matter of life and death, Mr. President, and it should be treated as such. That is only if a pandemic happens. Alright, it's time to hear about education. Our education system is lacking not only in funding, but also in modern curricular principles. Our outdated curriculum is wasting our youth. That is the reason why I advocate two things: an increase of the budget to improve access to education in rural areas, and a new education reform. To be honest, Swordland is lacking compared to Arcasia and United Cortana when it comes to education levels. The backbone of any country is its people, and we need to protect our future. We need to ensure the new government is as well educated as their counterparts in more modern countries. Nonsense. Swordland is still here because of this very system that you insult. How can you insult a system that teaches our sons and daughters the principles of national identity and pride? We won't be compared to other countries. Swordland is Swordland. I agree with Elias. Swordland is Swordland. I will think about it. Now it's time to hear the opinion about the military. What is there here about? I already voiced my opinion. Rumsburg is coming, whether we like it or not. Not this year or next year. If not next year, then the year after that. Mr. President, you and I have a shared responsibility to protect this nation from its enemies, and I intend to do so until my last breath. I will say this with certainty. If Rumsburg doesn't make a move against Swordland in 2 or 3 years, my name is not Iosif Lancia. There can be no argument against increasing the budget for our army when there is only an enemy on our doorstep, waiting for us to make one wrong move. Anyone who thinks otherwise is a fool. The issue with Rumsburg can be solved diplomatically. What kind of message are we sending to them and the whole world if we suddenly start ramping up our military budget? That we are ready to defend our nation, Miss Walda? Exactly. I agree with CR, we need to be as diplomatic as possible. I have made up my mind about the budget. We can proceed. Very good. Talking points from everyone. Well then. The time to make the decision on the budget has come. Consider it with care, Mr. President. Oh, I hate this budget. Because I make that damn promise. Do I go into debt? It would be 1 in debt. That wouldn't be huge. Huh? Isn't 1 and -2 -1? Why am I at -2? We have a deficit on our hands. We will need to resort to debt to finance future investment. The situation can have adverse effects if we don't strike a balance. Agreed. Well then, let's start with law enforcement. Thank you for this decision, Mr. President. I knew you would see reason on this, considering our internal security threats are at an all-time high. I still disagree with Ms. Graff on how the money ought to be spent, but the increased funding is certainly a step in the right direction. Any statement on the matter, sir? I trust you to push the Ministry of Interior and Justice forward. We will tackle corruption and the backlog of cases head on. Let's hear the Minister of Education. Keeping the same budget will just result in the same problems. However, I prefer this over decrease. I will try to reform the system with my own resources. Our future depends on our children. Education is the first step in the fight against ignorance. Your expertise and passion should enable you to make the necessary changes for improvement. Thank you for your confidence in me, but without extra funds, we'll have to make sacrifices in our system. We'll see the consequences. Sierra clearly wasn't finished, but didn't interject. Iosif chimed in. It is a shame that the military won't be getting an increase. I will have to make sacrifice to maintain our defense. Lucian seemed as if he was about to say something, but looked down at his notepad when Iosif eyed him. With your talent and experience, you will overcome the issue our military faces. It will be harder to do so, but I shall find a way. It is my duty. Let's hear from Mr. Benawal. I can't say that maintaining funding is negative, but I don't think our services will perform any better. Welfare must remain a priority for our term. There is no other way around it. It is best we continue our funding as it is. You'll have to find new resources. The Ministry of Health will resort to privatization efforts to create funds to improve services. Excellent. That covers all branches. Each minister will approach you with their respective policy requests and expectations over the next year. Thank you for your time and participation in this significant moment. The meeting is concluded. For those of you who didn't like the decision, don't take it personally. God, I hate that. Grr. I don't like being in debt. After a marathon 18 hours of negotiations, the Swedish governmental budget for the current term has been finalized. The government envisages spending around 13 billion SR next year, almost 2 billion SR more than this year. The 1954 budget sees the first measure for more internal security being introduced. While the details of the allocation of the increased security funding is not yet clear, it is expected that the Ministry of Interior and the Ministry of Justice will both benefit from the increase. Minister of the Interior, Ms. Graff, has expressed her gratitude for the increase in the law enforcement budget, saying that this increase will help us bring and maintain the peace that we've all been waiting for. Alright, I think that might be it for this turn. Here we go. Chapter 2, A New Swordland. We've been receiving reports about the capacity of Ep.5's regional airport. The mayor of Ep.5 is preparing to put a request forward for an investment to build an international airport in the city. For a touristic region like Ep.5, he claims that it would increase the overall prosperity of Swordland. Lakaben. Central Bank issues budget deficit warning. The Central Bank of Swordland issued a warning regarding the extensive government budget deficit that has occurred in the first year of the administration. The potential consequences of irresponsible economic management were highlighted. Edith Agnock relayed that a large deficit could have dire consequences on the strength of the currency and hamper the potential of the still-to-recover economy. The General Staff has performed an analysis of on our borders to access our military defense capabilities against a potential Rumsberg attack. The result shows that our military equipment is outdated and needs replacement as soon as possible. The continuation of the warning report shows that in the event of an attack, our borders would be broken through easily, leaving the primary regions of Swordland exposed. Sierra Waldo reports that the current education institutions in rural regions of Swordland have been largely neglected. As part of her analysis, the literacy rate in Swordland currently stands at 80%, while rural regions like Narbel have a literacy rate of only 64%. The lack of schools per capita also reflect these results. Massive network of BFF priests discovered. Bergian Special Zone Security has reported the discovery of a large scale of religious networks. An unusual encounter. Former President Saul's open hospitality. In an unexpected encounter, local fishers were invited for tea by none other than former President Tarquin Sol himself. This seemingly ordinary exchange revealed a side of Sol's seldom seen in public life. His humble and warm hospitality, even after his tenure, shines a light on the strong community spirit within Duru Island. The incident underscores how Sol remains a figure of interest in the public eye, influencing society beyond the confines of politics. 54 to 55, season ends. FC Gelsword claims the league title again. Okay, football. United Cortana Congress addresses State of the Union and revolutionary expansion. Ocasio fires the M4 ICBM. Prime Minister Alvarez of Lesbia visits Pales, offers support amid tensions with Rizia. Bogsland Navy forces Agnolia drill ship to retreat from Helgeland. Workers' Rights Act. Oh, of course it uses government budget. Damn you! Section 1 of this bill sets the groundwork for fair compensation by establishing a minimum wage of 2.4 Sordish Ren per hour. This serves as a benchmark for fair and equitable pay, ensuring that no workers in Swordland is compensated below this rate. Section 2 addresses the issue of excessive labor, setting a maximum limit of 60 hours per week of work per week. This provision aims to prevent worker exploitation and safeguards the well-being of Swordиш labor force. Section 3 introduces the concept of double overtime pay. This stipulates that any work performed beyond 40 hours work week will be compensated at twice the normal hourly wage. Okay, so far, what is costing me the government money? Why am I having to pay for this? This is the employer. This is the employer. This is the employer. Section 4 focuses on worker safety and human work conditions. It mandates that the employer must take all necessary steps to protect their workers from occupational hazards. That's the employer. Why am I paying? Why is the government paying for this? Section 5 extends these protections to migrant or undocumented workers, granting them the same rights as Sordish citizens. Employees who fail to abide. That's why we're paying for it, because we're extending it to... No. I liked the bill right up to Section 5. Too bad I couldn't veto just a specific section of it. Agnolia has started a new oil drilling operation very close to the disputed territory of Hejland. The tension increased when the situation turned into a standoff between Valksland and Agnolia warships. It took several hours for the gridlock to be resolved, and the situation was de-escalated for now. Unidentified object spotted close to Quinali border. Security Agency in Morelia have reported sighting an unidentified object close to the Quinali border. The object was flying at a high altitude at a very high speed. Currently, there is no clarity on what the object could be or its potential implications. Some intelligence officers indicate that the sighting could be a potential CSP low-orbit satellite. The Morelian Authority are working with their Quinali counterparts to investigate the matter further. There's quite a few countries here that we haven't even really touched on very much. News. Rain vetoes workers' rights bill. Despite the very recent Morbell mine disaster, which claims 112 lives, President Rain has decided to veto the workers' rights bill that included safeguards for workers regarding the work security. The veto has caused public outcry in Morbell. No empathy for the working class. No empathy for paying for illegal citizens. Regional investment decision, huh? We can't. It was an early evening, still light out with just a faint nip in the air. Frank was at a friend's and Deanna was at an art class. Monica and I decided to go out for a walk before dinner. Our favorite place for a stroll was the nearby Capitol Park, the largest green space in all of Hulsord. Before the children were born, We had spent many an evening engaged in deep conversation along the riverside promenade. Another favorite path wound through the woods behind the presidential house complex to a private pond where the children could swim in the summer. I was told that Sol himself had it built. The benefits of being president. Monica met me by the door, and we put on our coats and hat. I was going to suggest we walk towards Sol Square, but the guards told me it's been closed for yet another protest. I wonder who they are protesting this time. What does it matter? They're two sides of the same coin. You always did believe yourself to be above the fray. Funny how becoming president changes one's perspective. In any case, where shall we go? I'm not sure Capitol Park is a wise idea in this climate either. You're right, it's not worth the security risk. Let's stay inside the gates. I agree. Let's go then, before the children get home. I informed the guards of our route, and we left the house. The guards followed at a discreet distance as we headed towards the walking trail. As we entered the woods, Monica broke the silence. So, how was your day? Paperwork, endless meetings, the usual nightmare. I don't know. I imagine some might find that stimulating. What about your day? Oh, it was fine. I got up from some reading while the children were at school. Just outside the gate, I glimpsed Ioannis Krona, the former Minister of Justice, walking toward the Capitol Park. I remembered that Nia Morgana used to be his vice minister. He didn't seem to notice us as he walked by. Ioannis had once fought hard and strong against Sol's judiciary reform, but after years of the government blocking his every move, he gave up on his ideals and became part of the administration. What did our ideals really mean if they could be changed so easily? What about the people we idolize? Evelyn also came around for tea. She says hi. She was feeling rather low, though. Apparently she and Peter had a bit of a disagreement. Peter's in the doghouse again? How'd it happen? Apparently Peter had too much whiskey, as usual, and didn't behave when Evelyn's father was over for dinner yesterday. You know, Peter, what do you think of this? That's Peter, perpetually pickled. I'll have a talk with him. Good. Evelyn seems close to tears. Aren't you glad you and I don't have these kinds of quarrels? Monica didn't say anything. We kept walking. You know, Evelyn hasn't been the same since what happened to her at Holsword Post last year. You remember how she got fired for supporting Alfonso? Peter tried everything to get her job back, but it didn't work. Maybe he didn't try hard enough. I don't think anything would have worked. It was a sad day for freedom of the press in Swordland. But enough about the veterans. I also spoke to Janice on the phone. Who? You remember, my friend from university. We were in the Swordish literature class together. A few years younger than me, red hair, scar on her forehead. We had dinner with her and her husband once or twice. I still don't remember her, but go on. Anyway, she's been working as an executive assistant at the Violet Pictures film studio. She recently became pregnant and asked her boss for paid maternity leave, and guess what? She was fired for it. After asking for maternity leave? That's terrible. I know. I was beside myself when she told me. And that's not all. They immediately replaced her with a younger, less experienced man, the son of an executive, no less. So she called the First Lady to ask for help. She called a friend. She knows this is something I'm passionate about. As it happens, another friend works for a television station that's hiring secretaries, so I connected the two of them. That doesn't solve the deeper problem, though. So you're finally starting to see things my way. Women in this country are still seen as wives and mothers first, human beings second. They're harassed at work, underpaid, blocked from positions of power, and those are the lucky ones. The fact that there are still places in this country where little girls like Deanna are denied the right to an education. Yes, and I will do what I can to change that. It can't just be you. These little girls and people like Janice need someone to speak on their behalf, a role model, a successful woman. We had reached the pond at the end of the trail. A park bench overlooked the water. Monica gestured to it, and we sat down. Which brings me to my point. I know that the mayor of Enrica, Curtin Lestat, will be delivering a speech at the annual opening of the Ep.5 festival. My wish is to take his place and deliver the speech instead. Lestat was one of Sordland's most influential politicians. He had started his career in Ep.5 before rising to power in Enrica. Ep.5's current mayor had personally invited him to make the opening speech. Replacing him with Monica would anger him. Probably not enough to cause a huge incident, but enough that he might use his influence over the conservatives to block me in the assembly. I want to base the speech on women's rights in Sordland, on the opposition and discrimination we face every day on the basis of our sex alone. I want our voice heard, and this festival is the time to do it. I just need your blessing as my husband and the president of Sordland. Remember my time with the Swordish League of Women in university? You supported me then. I'm asking you to support me now. Monica's eyes were blazing with fire. I hadn't seen since we were students. She wanted this badly. But I had to be careful with my promises. You'll have my full support, always. That's why I love you. Thank you, Anton. You have no idea how much this means to me. Monica beamed at me, her face flushed with excitement. This is going to cause me problems. One way or another, I want to contribute to this country, no matter what happens. We are not weak, Anton, but we are only strong as long as we stand by our ideals. This was why I had married her. This passion and resolve. I should have anticipated that. Sooner or later, she would join me in the political arena. We rose from the bench and started making our way back home. Otherwise, we'll end up like... Ionis Krona? Exactly. He backed down on his ideals, and now everyone knows him for what he actually is. Spineless. If that was how people remembered Ionis, how would they remember me? Whatever he had done, whatever ideals he had lost, he must have had his reasons. Would they remember me as a true patriot, a reformer of the country? What would they write about me in the history books? Let's get back to the house for dinner. Of course. Lead the way. Monica smiled. You know, I believe I will. When we arrived home, I called my secretary, Livia, and asked her to inform Mr. Lest that Monica would be making the speech in his stead. The sun began to set over the horizon, bathing the clouds in shades of orange and pink. Gassam resumes hiring. Gassam, Lachavin, local energy giant, has resumed its hiring operations after several months of pause. company recently welcomed 100 new employees to its workforce, signaling a potential recovery phase as an extended hiring freeze. With the latest additions, Gazem looks set to rejuvenate its operation and drive towards a more robust performance in the upcoming months. Galkandus violence in Dare. There have been several incidents of religious violence committed by bloodish Galkandans in Dare. The attacks targeted members of other religious groups, resulting in injury and property damage. Bergia here. This is our biggest hotbed of problems, really. BFF bombs police station. In a treacherous attack, the BFF has bombed a police station in Dare. Initial casualties are reported at 3 officers dead and 22 injured. Alright, let's read the report. Lesbia condemns Rizia's energy alliance? In a recent public statement, Prime Minister Patricio Alvarez voiced stern condemnation of Rizia's cooperative energy agreement with Swordland. Alvarez argued that the partnership undermines Lesbia's energy industry and specifically raised concerns about Les Power's stake in the region's energy market. The Prime Minister also drew attention to the ongoing disagreements between Lesbia and Rizia over maritime border, warning that the energy deal could further exacerbate these issues. Rizia hails energy collaboration success. Following the fruitful joint investment in Gassam, King Ramas hailed the initiative as a shining example of regional cooperation. He underscored the potential for this successful partnership to pave the way to future collaborative endeavors, ultimately leading to mutual economic prosperity. The King expressed optimism for the growth of ROG and the sustainability of this cooperative model of energy investment. Alright, what's in the news? Galkandus violence in Swordland. Royal Emerald Energy eyes Gassam, a strategic move. Rumberg's Royal Emerald Energy potential investment in Swordland's Gassam is a move to be welcomed, not feared. This could be the lifeline that Gassam, a bedrock of our domestic energy sector, needs to recover from its financial difficulties. While concerns about foreign ownership are understandable, the international dynamics of free market economies must be recognized. A significant influx of capital could enable Gassam to reclaim its standing, offering stability and growth to Swordland economy. Not to mention, shouldn't that improve our relations with Rumsford? One would think. Rizia's investment, a lifeline for Gassam. Yeah. Explosion in Dare, 3 killed, 22 wounded. Detonation, Swordland in a tough spot. Current public reports from the Ministry of Economy are pointing to a deep underlying problem with Swordland's economical standing in debt. It appears that the current venture to get out of recession have put a considerable dent in the reserves, although the comments from the administration state that the situation is not only temporary, that remains to be seen. It's only temporary. Smalak condemns Arcadian soldiers in Lesbia. Progress to boost Nubia and surrounding nations. Chancellor denounces Arcadian base on Ravnos Island. Okay, budget allocation of law enforcement. The next scheduled meeting was about the law enforcement budget with Nia and Lilius. I heard some knocks on the door. Nia entered and took a seat in front of my desk. Lilius was absent. Good afternoon, Mr. President. Lilius will be late. Apparently there's been an urgent matter at the Ministry of Interior she had to attend to. Shouldn't take too long. What urgent matter? She said something about supply distribution for the police force. Nothing major. I turned to my reports, and Nia smoothed back an errant strand of her hair. There was an awkward silence. While we wait, why don't we have a little chat? This might come as a little strange, but I'm proud of you. Despite everything, you are actually trying to reform the country. It's we, Nia, not me. I couldn't do any of this by myself, so I'm proud of you. Well, thank you. You certainly have a way with words, don't you? I wouldn't be president otherwise. She laughed. Fair enough. She leaned forward. How are you really holding up, Anton? Being the president, I mean. Feels like the whole weight of the country crushes me down every single day. Everyone wants to be president until they are one, I guess. I want to assist you in the country as best as I can, and to do that, I have an idea. We need to eliminate the worst problem we have. Corruption. And how do we do that? It's high time Old Guard and the Supreme Court stop holding the country in the palm of their hand. That's why I want to form a new unit, the Anti-Corruption Police. That is my idea. So what if the Anti-Corruption Police get corrupted? What then? I'm still figuring out the details myself right now, but of course there would be safety mechanisms in place. Also, one more thing. About Lilius. I wouldn't trust her if I were. She barely finished the sentence before we heard a knock on the door. Nia almost jumped in her chair. Lilius Graf entered the room. Mr. President, Naya. I hope that I'm not interrupting your conversation. Not at all. We were just discussing a few things. Naya smiled at Lilius. I am sorry for being late. There was an important matter at the ministry. The security forces of Bergia are arbitrarily not cooperating with my department and created some minor annoyances. Fortunately, due to my limited authority in the special zone of Bergia, I cannot control their operations. Luckily, they didn't completely botch their task and actually uncovered a large network of priests that are recruiting Bergians for the Bloodish Freedom Front. This sounds very significant. Do you want to explain more? The issue was a miscommunication about an ongoing investigation inside Bergia, but as I said, it didn't affect the results in a negative way. The investigation itself, however, reveals some troubling facts. We suspect that the existence of a massive network of BFF-aligned priests currently serving in Bergia. We have discovered that most of the existing Golconda sanctuaries and communities inside Bergia are indeed working directly for the BFF. Several reports also point to a possible infiltration of the Dasnerist and Ruhishist communities by these Golconda sects. May the divine God forgive us if this is true. Thank you for the brief report, Lilius. Of course, Mr. President. Well then, let's go straight in. We will provide a brief update on the situation of law enforcement. Go ahead. Naya? The Ministry of Justice and the Supreme Court is working in close collaboration with the Ministry of Interior to address the protests in the country. I must add that thanks to the hard work of our judiciary, the law enforcement forces assigned to my ministry are doing their jobs efficiently. I would call it the success of our forces on the ground, not due to the judiciary branch of government. Lilius shot Nia a brief withering glance. As expected, the budget increase has boosted morale of the employees in the law enforcement agencies. In these dire times, my people and Naya's people are especially delighted. I think you will be glad to hear that the support for you among the forces is at an all-time high, Mr. President. And for that, all I will say is bravo, this was an excellent decision. Agreed, at the Ministry of Justice we are very happy with the decision as well. The backlog of the court cases are dwindling, and we have started to fulfill the needs of the current situation. Certainly a step in the right direction. I did what was expected from me, that's all. Of course. Well then, let's move on to what we are actually here for. Due to the budget increase, we can start doing much more as the main branches of the security of Swordland. However, a decision has to be made about the budget balance between the Ministry of Interior and the Ministry of Justice. Exactly, when deciding you must look at the bigger picture. I believe you will make the right choice and pick the Ministry of Interior. And why should I pick the Ministry of Interior? The Ministry of Interior is a much more significant and important government agency that is in need of the funds, especially during these times where there are many protests in the country. Good luck prosecuting criminals or going through local government laws without enough judges, Lilius. And what if I decide to balance the budget between the Ministry of Interior and Ministry of Justice? Balancing the budget won't help as much. The current situation clearly demands that a decisive choice be made to benefit the nation. I agree. We need to focus on one ministry to achieve tangible results. Of course, that would make the most sense in the current situation. Would be to support much neglected Ministry of Justice. That would improve the legal system in Swordland. Tell me, Naya, who brings the criminals before the justices? Let me answer. The police force is connected to the Ministry of the Interior. Okay, why should I pick the Ministry of Justice? Each day, the stacks of legal cases are piling up for judges. Cases for corruption and criminals are delayed due to lack of funds. This seems to be an organization, not a funding one. The Interior needs the money more for the police and local governments. And what will it be? The budget will be distributed equally. We have been battling with the unrest in the country for a long time now. We want to put an end to it. That's why we are proposing the formation of community police. The community police would be picked from trustworthy members of the local community. It will give us greater coverage over the country to combat criminals. While some of the law enforcement agencies look at this negatively, we do believe it has potential to be successful. This will come in handy to deal with the protests. Exactly. If you accept, this will give our administration power to handle the unrest swiftly. Huh. This sounds like more opportunities for corruption, doesn't it? That's why we're proposing the formation of the community police. The community police would be picked from trustworthy members of the local community. Who decides who's trustworthy? Is it Lilius? Is it Naya? Who is picking these trustworthy people? It will give us greater coverage over the country to combat criminals. While some in law enforcement agencies look at this negatively, we do believe it has the potential to be successful. This will come in handy to deal with the protests. Exactly. If you accept, this will give our administration power to handle the unrest swiftly. I mean, both of my ministers are currently asking me in unison for this. They seem to be in agreement on this, and neither of these people are ever in agreement. So, very well. Form the community police. Excellent. We will start the prep work. You are making good decision after good decision today, Mr. President. We will be in touch. Thank you, Mr. President. Protesters target sacred symbols. Rain denied the workers their rights. Economy slowly recovering. Richter calls president to action. Head of Swordland's main opposition party has said President Rain needs to address issues like term limits and an electoral threshold. Okay, Bloodish Freedom Front using schools to recruit and to train militants. We need to stop treating the Bloodish Freedom Front as enemies. They're going to continue to disrupt everything unless they're given a seat at the table. Change to the taxation system. The door opened. Simon, Mikhail, and Edith entered the meeting room. Mr. President. Mr. President, so nice to see you again. Good afternoon, Mr. President. It's great to see you all again. Simon put down his bag on the table and started collecting his documents while the others slowly took their seats. Mr. President, before we start, I would like to mention some rumors that I heard. Vetoing the recent Workers' Right Act was welcomed by a lot of business owners. The first section about the minimum wage would have been very damaging to many corporations. I heard the same. A good decision, I'd say, especially during a recession. I don't care about rumors. If someone wants to say something, they can say it to me directly. Neither of them responded. Simon waited patiently. Once everyone was ready, he adjusted his glasses. First of all, I would like to thank everyone here for their work on the tax system reform. We all know how complicated our current system is, and this work wouldn't be possible without you. He turned to me. The ultimate goal here is to end the recession. Before we move ahead and start formulating a plan, we need you to determine our direction, Mr. President. We have few possibilities as a result of the work we have done so far. We can increase, maintain, or decrease the taxes for large corporations. I believe some of us in the room have a few strong opinions about that. In parallel, we can increase, maintain, or decrease the taxes for small and medium businesses. Let's start with the large corporations, and we'll move on to the small businesses. What is the outcome if we increase the taxes for large corporations? Simply put, if we increase the taxes, we will have more government budgets to spend, which may come in handy. On the other hand, it's not directly helping us revitalize the economy. Our government is already in debt. This might be a way to get out of debt. I do believe there is one way to get out of the recession. It is through the trade and the economic contributions of large corporations. Increasing their taxes will turn them on you. I'll go a step further. Increasing their taxes will have disastrous results and will make you an enemy of them. Trust me, Mr. President, nobody wants to make an enemy of them. It goes both ways, Mr. Raven. Of course. What if we decrease the taxes for large corporations? It's not an option at this point. Our state is broken. We're barely functioning with the help of the taxes. So we can't do it? It's not a possibility, unless if we try and balance it with a tax increase for small and medium businesses. I do not advise that, though. Is there any downside to keeping the things as they are? I'm of the opinion that if we don't make any changes, nothing will change to stop the recession. We need to do something. I think so too. Agreed. What does everyone think we should do? I don't think we can do anything at this point. Although I would have preferred a decrease in taxes, it doesn't seem to be the best option. Our international trade is driven mostly by products of these corporations. They are the backbone of our economy. Exactly, an increase should be out of the question. These companies are the backbone of our economy and are way out of the recession. Maintain the taxes for large corporations. This will not change anything. We won't gain anything by standing still where we are. I protest again. Enough, the President has made his choice. Well then, I have taken a note of our action and I will put it to implementation as soon as possible. What about the small? That was my choice on large businesses. What about small businesses? Okay. What if we decrease taxes for small and medium businesses? Fortunately, this is not possible. Our state is broke. We are barely functioning with the current taxes. Okay, I just decreased taxes for small businesses. We should be going to -3 in debt. And hopefully something comes along that makes us money soon. Like this highway construction thing. It should happen soon. The Brunei Rural Development Plan, a brainchild of Rural Development Minister Gus Manger, is nearly completion in whole sort. This strategy aims to revitalize the rural economy, fortifying food insecurity, enhancing the regional economy of Brunei. The upcoming presentation of the finalized plan marks a significant milestone in the evolution of Swordsland's rural development agenda. Yeah, you better hold off on that. We don't have any money. Oh man, that budget's killing me. Wait, we've got something here to Kingdom. Queen Beatrice Livingston calls Swordsland a threat to world. What? Why? Queen Beatrice Livingston appeared on TV to call Swordsland not just a threat to the peace in Eastern Markova, but a threat to the peace in the entire world. She condemned the riots and police violence in Swordsland, also expressing her worries about the direction of Swordsland is headed. She urged the Rumburgian army to secure the southern border, citing violent incidents in northern Swordsland. ATO Economic Summit in Perla, Capitalism Diverse Forms. The ATO has taken steps to strengthen its economic front by hosting pivotal summits in Perla, yada 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 yada. Okay. News. Holstrom advocates for tightened immigration. Tax cuts for small and medium corporations. In order to end the recession, the administration has announced new change to tax system. As per the information provided by the Ministry of Economy, the new changes include tax cuts of 10%, bringing the total to 25% for small and medium-sized corporations. Young Swords denies allegations. Tornhill School wins award. Red Youth calls for peace. Earlier today, Johan Gazmik, one of the leaders of the Red Youth, spoke to the public and condemned the opportunistic looting and violence taking place in cities across Swordsland, saying it's not being done in the name of Bernard Circus. He denied terrorist allegations and condemned the attack, saying the Red Youth has no connection to the violence. Smolak threatens new military incursions targeting BFF. Victor Smolak has threatened to launch military operations in northern Wayland, close to the borders of Swordsland and Lesbia, against the Bloodish rebel groups. Okay. As part of a planned program, we arrived in Laren to visit a middle school. The prestigious Tornhill School was situated close to the suburbs just outside the city center. The building was flanked by two hills, each beautifully dotted with shrubs and flowers. Lucy and Ciara and I got out of our cars and met at the entrance. Our presence had not gone unnoticed. Apart from our guards, there were at least 10 reporters following us. That must be the principal, right this way, sir. The principal was a man of short stature with bushy mustache and a pair of glasses. He approached us quickly, but was stopped by the security guards. They started patting him down and searched him. Wait for them to finish. Mr. President, such an honor to meet with you. Shake his hand. Welcome to our humble school. It's good to be here. Excellent. You must be Mr. Galad. It's a pleasure to meet you. And Miss Walda, so good of you to come all the way out here. Thank you. At the end. 1 second. At the entrance, the school's motto was inscribed on the wall in giant letters. Instrutin sir agnicar av... Yes, some sort of Latin stuff. Okay. Education is the premise of progress in all societies, in all families. We walked through the gates. There was many students lined up in front of the stairs of the main building. As we entered, the students started singing the national anthem. The principal proudly looked at them. Marvelous, my dear students. After the anthem finished, all the students immediately snapped to attention and turned to me. Looks more like a military institution than a school. Exactly. That's what we pride ourselves on. Discipline has the utmost importance in our school. We need more educated people, not soldiers. On that, we are aligned. I can assure you that our students are very well educated. In fact, our school is one of the top 10 middle schools in all of Swordland. Now, we will watch the students take their daily student oath. A boy and girl went up to the stage and grabbed their microphones. The students turned to them. I am a sword. My strength lies in my blood. I will respect our honorable elders. I will protect the young. My life belongs to Swordland now, and it will belong to it forever. I will always follow the guiding light of Colonel Soul and the great swords. Morgana Westcor, Vector and Sis Die. As soon as I entered, the whole classroom rose up and snapped to attention. Sit down, please. The students sat down. The same boy and girl walked up to us. These are our top students and our top class. This here is my son. The boy came before me and saluted me like a military officer. Tell Mr. President what you want to be. Mr. President, I want to be a general, sir. I'm ready to sacrifice myself for my country and you, sir. Good, you will make a fine soldier in the future. At ease, General. Thank you, sir. The principal squeezed his son's shoulders, and the boy looked up and smiled at his father. He patted him on the back and sent him off to his seat. Cameras flashed. This is simply ridiculous. You are raising soldiers here, not students. I'm so sorry. I will immediately perform disciplinary actions. How about you, young lady? What do you think about this? She is our top student in the school. Her excellent grades are to... I didn't ask you. She bent down and gently addressed the young students. What do you think about your school, just between us girls? I'm sick of having to knit and sew while the boys learn science and chemistry. I'm smarter than all of them. Why do I have to take these stupid handcraft classes? Shh, don't you know who you're talking? Shut up, let her speak. Sierra's presence has emboldened the girl. She went on. My math and reading scores are the best in the school, but they won't let me take the classes I want just because I'm a girl. I want to be a scientist, not some soldier's wife. You heard her, Mr. Principal. You will make the necessary changes at once. As you wish, sir, at once. I will personally check back and ensure that the changes are made. Yes, sir. The cameras flashed once again. I looked around the classroom and saw a large portrait of Colonel Saul. Well then, unfortunately we're almost out of time. We have other meetings to attend to today. Thank you for the warm welcome. Mr. President, Lucian, please go ahead. I'd like to speak with the girl alone. Very well. Thank you for visiting our school, sir. Come on, class. 1, 2. All students in the classroom yelled, but this boy who I met was the loudest. Morgana Westcor. Vecturn sis die. After another round of photos, we departed. Geralt unveils newest wine and sends message. The famed dandelion label of Erlery, rooted in rich viticultural legacy of Geralt of Ribery, has introduced a new wine to its esteemed collection. Mr. Hot Bellisword has sent a fine selection to the Maroon Palace and wrote a little note to accompany it. Wine, like politics, operates not on a scale of lesser or greater, but on a spectrum of nuanced complexity. The distinctions are subjective, the flavors are variable as policy decisions. As a winemaker studies the subtle notes in each grape, a politician must examine the unique shades of each strategy. If I'm to choose between one vintage and another, between one policy and another, I'd rather not choose at all, but rather appreciate and comprehend the intricate interplay each presents. After all, the art of winemaking, and indeed politics, lies not in forced choices, but in understanding and celebrating the subtle complexities inherent within. The latest edition is expected to uphold the characteristic floral tones, depth, and elegance that dandelion wines are cherished for. Wine connoisseurs and industry experts await the opportunity to savor this new vintage, and its potential influence on Swedish wine industry is a topic of considerable interest. That was a mouthful. Alright, the CSP has called for the dissolution of the Meftium International Trade Zone. The strategic location in Moreland territory and complemented by strategically vital ports has been the joint venture of Rizian, Morellian, Lesbian, and Valgland state corporations since the pre-revolutionary era. Yet the recent accession of Alma Sultana to the premiership of Morella has sparked a seismic shift in the arrangement. With staunch backing from Vogsland, Prime Minister Sultana has declared intentions to nationalize the mines and port, a move to potentially upend the status quo and alter the trajectory of the region's economic future. This move directly challenges the interest of Rizian Royal Gold, and by extension King Ramos Torres of Rizia. The announcement drew immediate attention from Lesbia's Prime Minister Alvarez, an ATO stalwart who firmly expressed his commitment to maintaining the current free market practices, heightening the tension between the two blocs. Alright, 1 second. Having to open doors. The life of a human. Okay, where are we here? President visits school in Liren. A middle school in Liren received a special visit from President Rain. Students and staff at Torrin Hill School, one of the 5 most prestigious schools in East Swordland, welcomed the special visitor on Thursday morning. President Rain has expressed his wish to visit the successful Torrin High School and spent the morning talking with staff and students. Joining in with lessons through the visit, Torrin Hill is delighted to have had an opportunity to represent the fantastic job that all staff members have been doing. A new star in Geralt's wine sky. Balanced energy prices. Energy prices in Swordland have remained remarkably stable over the last quarter, a positive sign for our economy. With a marginal increase of 0.8%, the stability in energy prices demonstrates the resilience of our domestic energy sector. Briefing on proposal of education reform. We were still in Laren, staying at a modest guest house for state employees. Sierra set up a meeting with me and Lucien to go over the plans for the education reform after our school visit. Lucien was seated across from me at the table going through documents. Sierra entered the room. After the visit yesterday, I couldn't even sleep thinking about the little boy and girl. I've never been more sure of my intentions to reform our education system. Lucien took off his reading glasses and put it on the table. I agree, an educational reform is necessary. Exactly. Those students have to repeat the same soulless propaganda every single day. They're being brainwashed at an age when their minds need to be free. On top of that, young girls are denied the same opportunity as boys. They're forced into the role of housewife before they even reach puberty. Nothing's changed since I went to school. Women like me, Lilius, Naya, even your wife, we had to study twice as hard to receive the same university education that you and Lucien took for granted. Is that the kind of country you want for your daughter to grow up in? Mr. President, we need to bring change. We need to free the minds of these young people. They are our future. Very well. What do you need to do for an educational reform? We need to keep politics out of the curriculum. Sol should only be viewed as a historical figure. Children shouldn't have to repeat his name every day. This is actively poisoning young bright minds. Instead of thinking for themselves, they're learning to take things at face value. We also need to ensure boys and girls receive the same instruction. Handcrafts like knitting and sewing should be taught to both sexes or not at all. Swordland's youth must be technically skilled and capable for the next decade. That won't be possible with the amount of nationalistic indoctrination and narrow-minded thinking found in schools today. Either we raise a generation ready for the challenges of the future or not. What will it be, Mr. President? Reform the education system. You will not regret it. I will get to work immediately. Now that the decision was made, let's move on. Very well. Sierra skimmed over her documents before continuing. With no change in budget, the ministry was left to its own devices. We made some tough choices, but still lack additional funds. Therefore, we are investigating if privatizing of education would draw enough funds to conduct investment. What are the advantages of privatization? There aren't many, but it would give us sorely needed funds and increase competition among schools. It would support our overall economic strategy of promoting a market economy. A few minutes of deliberation passed. We can manage without additional funds. The only reason I wanted to consider it is to have more money to improve education. So what's your decision? Initiate privatization to draw more funds. Will do. That should be it for now. I will get to work and report back later. This has been a very productive day. I will be returning to Holsword. Thank you for your time. We dispersed after spending nearly the entire day together. I took a moment simply to breathe the fresh evening air of Liren. I felt calmer here somehow, but I would have to return to the chaos of Holsword soon enough. Hey, something changed in our governmental budget. Stat increase, government budget. Situation update, education gap. Police factionalism. There has been some tension between traditional police units and the newly introduced community police, leading to factionalism within the law enforcement agencies. The introduction of community police was meant to improve policing in local communities and create a sense of ownership and responsibility among citizens. However, this new approach has caused friction with traditional police units who see it as a challenge to their authority and expertise. Nationwide peaceful protests. Lower crime in communities. The implementation of the community police program has shown great success in reducing crime rates. By recruiting and training trusted officers from within the local community, the program has been able to establish a strong presence in areas that were previously underserved by law enforcement. The program has also fostered better relations between the police and the community they serve, improving cooperation and communication. Ministry of Education has started work on education reforms. United Cortana has successfully launched a second satellite capable of facilitating radio communications. News. Greater Whole Sword free of protests. This week, a decisive intervention by government forces and the police brought a conclusive end to the paralyzing protests in Greater Holston region. These actions, albeit necessary, left a tragic trail of casualties and had a profound impact on the economy. A protest leader from Conradt voiced the sentiments of many when he said, "We want peace for our brothers and sisters in Swordland. We don't want more repression." This heartfelt plea underscores the widening chasm between authorities and the populace. Earlier the day witnessed a large-scale operation where hundreds of riot police cleared protesters from the streets of Holsword, driving them into the surrounding streets. The question remains as to whether this forceful action will quell the rising tides of dissent or merely redirect it. Kibner. Rain is making a mistake. What am I making a mistake on here? Head of Swordland's second opposition party said President Rain will not be able to keep ruling the country without addressing policies that have negatively affected our security, culture, and economy. He blamed President Rain for not being open to any discussions about proper reform. Kibner also criticized the PFJP leader Franz Richter for supporting President Rain. NFP cannot be part of this nonsensical collaboration anymore, as it has been transformed into an anti-nationalist committee, says Kibner. We also explained his concern over how PFJP supported Arcasia's imperialism and only cared about profits at the expense of Swordish people. Rain is making a mistake by working together with Richter and Kibner, and criticized the committee for not discussing the real issues around Swordland. Demonstrators arrested. Tens of thousands of demonstrators were driven out from city centers by riot police in the weekend. According to ground sources, thousands have been detained. The government has still not declared the real number or the identities of the individuals. The government crackdown on the protests around the country was swift and brought an end to the chaos in major cities such as Holsword and Lagavulin. The Grunai Rural Development Investment is a proposal by Rural Development Minister Gus Manager to bolster Swordland's rural economies. One potential strategy is the provision of subsidies for new farms, encourage more players in the agricultural field. Alternatively, Manager proposes an investment in the mechanization of existing farms to improve productivity of the initiation of crop research to foster innovation. Would love to, but the government doesn't have any funds. Meeting with Gloria Torre on planned reforms. I arrived at the Grand National Assembly, which was only a 5-minute drive away from the palace. Today, I had a private meeting with Gloria Torre, one of the leading figures of the USP. To get her approval for the proposal, she was also key in reaching 150 signatures to propose the new constitution, as she had extensive control over her party's conservative and moderate wings. As I walked through the corridors of the Grand National Assembly, I was confronted by memories of the historic building. Despite being a member of the Assembly not long ago, it now felt like the distant past. I walked into the left wing of the Assembly, which currently acted as the quarters of the USP. Gloria's office was the first one inside. I knocked on the door and entered. Good morning, Miss Torre. Good to see you here, Mr. Rain. It was a small, neatly organized office. There were small figurines, photos, and plants around the place. It had a homey feel, unlike my own assembly office when I had worked there. On her gesture, I took a seat. The chair was very uncomfortable. How are you doing, Miss Torre? I'm fine, Mr. Rain. How are you? I'm very happy to see you, Miss Torre. It's been a while. Indeed, Mr. President. She smiled. So how does the presidential chair compare to the one in the Assembly? The chair is fine, but the work that comes with it is insane. Well, you knew about that, didn't you? Anyway, let's keep this simple, Mr. Rain. We both know why we're here. You want me to give you my support. I don't see why the backbone of the USP would support your rushed reforms. Don't you realize they go directly against the wishes of the founder of this party and the state? The reforms are not against anyone. It's all in the name of democracy. In the name of democracy? Even though you owe everything to Colonel Saul, I think you never liked him, nor the party he built. There is nothing personal about this, Miss Torre. Whatever you intend to do, you will be facing quite the opposition. That's all I can say. I'm sure we can make a deal. I'm not sure about that, especially when you're trying to decrease the electoral threshold. You must know this will mean bringing the communists into the assembly. You probably have a deal with either them or maybe the PFJP. Friends seems to be positive about giving you support too. The decrease is important to democratize our elections. I don't know how your acts could even be justified under the USP. I do not support an election threshold of 8%. This sets a dangerous situation for us, as both the WPB and the CPS will gain more power. I'd rather leave the threshold as it is. That is not up to you, Miss Torrey. My proposal threshold stays. That's too bad. Yet you still want our support. I don't know if I can promise anything before I see action from you, especially with all these issues you're creating for the party. I must say that I expected some sort of reform regarding the appointment of ministers. I am surprised that you are ignoring the large support behind that. But moving on, let me give you some advice, Mr. President. Giving yourself the same title as Tarquin Soul will not make you a hero. You have not earned that title nor the immunity and the protection it brings. Remove the changes to the Member of Honor law from the proposal before it becomes public. Let's not damage our party nor your reputation further. This will only bring you ridicule. And there is no way the Assembly or the Supreme Court would vote for this. Fine, I'll remove that. I believe I can give you the help you require. She repositioned herself in the chair. I do have one condition. I want you to cancel that speech you were planning for your wife at the Ep.5 festival. Mayor Lust is not only popular in Ep.5, he's one of the most influential members of the USB conservative wing. We wouldn't want to upset him, would we? I don't care if he's upset. He's not the only person who would be upset, Mr. President. You know that. If you want conservative support, you cannot let the First Lady speak in Mr. Lested's stead. This isn't about her, it's about women's rights. I thought you'd understand. Believe me, I understand more than your wife even. Tell me, why does she want to do this speech so badly? She wants to give sordid women a voice. So do I, but this is not the way. I've spent nearly 2 decades in this assembly. I know how real change happens. The old conservative men who hold the power in this government will not listen to Miss Rain's speech and suddenly have a change of heart, rather the opposite. They'll see a shrill, hectoring housewife who slept with the president for a spot on that stage and is now hopelessly out of her depth. That's unfair. Monica's been campaigning for women's rights since I met her. I'm just telling you what others will think. Listen, I do believe the status of women could improve during your administration. Your education minister has been gathering ideas for a bill that appears quite promising. But you've got to have patience. Having Monica speak now will be detrimental for all of us. Just let Mayor Lestat have his little moment in the spotlight. His time will be over soon enough. No, Monica will speak at the festival. Then we are at an impasse. All right, Mr. President, I'm sorry. I won't be able to help you. I wish you luck gathering the signatures you need. She suddenly stood up. I must get back to work. Thanks for stopping by, Mr. President. She extended her hand to me for a handshake. I stood up and shook her hand. This doesn't mean we won't be able to cooperate on other matters. I hope to speak again soon. I left her room. Albin in the reformist wing was my last hope to get the needed 150 signatures for the proposal. Even then, it looked quite uncertain if we could get 166 votes in the assembly. I went outside. Sergei drove me back to the palace where I met Lucian and told him the bad news. It's fine. I really didn't want to be successful. BFF warns Welland, Swordland, and Lesbia. In a startling announcement, spokespersons of the Bloodish Freedom Front have released a statement condemning the governments of Swordland, Lesbia, and Welland for their mistreatment of Bloodish citizens. The statement warns of potential action against these governments. They continue to ignore the will of the Bloodish people. Lucian offers to play chess. Spend some time with Lucian to play chess or go home to rest with the family. Oh, this is interesting. Alright, let's play some chess. An evening chess match with Lucien Galad. Evening descended on the capital as Lucien and I found ourselves alone in the office. I followed my chief strategist's eyes to the chessboard on the coffee table. The sight of it reminded me of a simpler time of late-night strategy sessions turning into chess matches. We used to escape the political chaos into a world of rooks and bishops. Our battles were both tense and friendly, a reflection of our long history together. Lucien had always proved a challenging opponent. His strategies, both on the chessboard and in politics, had the same unpredictable edge. A soft knock interrupted my reminiscing. Livia came in with our usual coffee. She noticed the chessboard and smiled. Long nights of strategy planning and now a game of chess? You two never stop thinking, do you? We might have to order dinner if this game takes as long as the ones we used to play. I'll keep the Maroon Palace chef on speed dial then. Have a good game, gentlemen. She turned and left the room. Lucien acknowledged her exit with a slight nod, his eyes still fixed on the board. I hope you remember that it's not always the king who holds the power. Sometimes a well-placed pawn can change the game. Power dynamics of a chessboard can teach us a lot about politics, wouldn't you agree, Lucien? Absolutely, and playing chess with politicians will tell you more about their goals and plans than any speech. As Lucien positioned the pieces on the chessboard, it stirred memories of our days in the United Swordland Party. His dexterous maneuvering reflected the unseen orchestration that helped Peter and me ascend through the ranks. As the final piece was set into position, the board transformed into a silent battlefield. Enough reminiscing. Let's start, Lucien. Ah, the impatience of a president. Very well, let's begin. Which color do you prefer? Black or usual or white this time? Black for me. I like the advantage of reacting. A strategist's choice. I'm not surprised. The board is yours to react to. With the sides chosen, Lucien sat back, his fingers laced together in contemplation. And thus the game began. Lucien moved his knight from g1 to f3, aiming for a retie opening. It's not always about the center, is it? In response to Lucien's attempt at the retie opening, I advanced my pawn from e7 to e5, aiming to strengthen my grip in the center. Solid move, Mr. Rain. Maintaining control of the center is often key. A few minutes passed and a few more actions were made on the board. Lucien's next move was calculated and swift. The bishop glided from f1 to g2, preparing for a potential kingside castle and fortifying the pawn structure. Opting for a solid defense, Lucien? I decided decided to mirror Lucian's strategy, moving my king to safety. I moved my king 2 squares towards the rook and switched the rook to the other side, completing a kingside castle. With this, the stage was set. The opening maneuvers had transformed into a mid-game battle of wits. Each pawn pushed every subtle reposition had been showing to Lucian's strategic prowess and my resilience. The next move would prove crucial. Lucian's queen cut a path through the heart of the board, menacing my vulnerable kingside. The stakes were sky high. A bold pawn advance could release my rook's potential and threaten Lucian's knight. On the other hand, I could gamble with a Roomish gambit, a risky play that could wrestle control of the center away from him. The gambit. Pushing down the center, bold but risky. Sometimes one must gamble to win, Lucian. He calmly slid his queen across the board, threatening my isolated pawn. His subtle smirk revealed he understood my gambit and was ready to counter. Lucian had made a bold move, pushing his pawn forward and forcing my bishop into a vulnerable position. While the urge to secure my threatened bishop was strong, and an enticing opportunity also lay before me, a potential double attack on Lucian's king and rook. Initiate the fork. I maneuvered my knight expertly, landing it on a square that posed a double threat to Lucian's king and rook. A daring maneuver under fiery pressure. You're an adept tactician, but this is far from over. In response to my knight's threat, Lucian moved out the threat, creating a barrier between my knight and his king. Only through fire do we learn the nature of material. Exploit the back rank. I move my rook to the last rank, threatening Lucian's king with a potential back rank checkmate. Clever, President Rain, but did you consider all the consequences? The center was congested, a show of Lucian's unyielding style. His formation was formidable, his pieces interlocked in a matrix of support, each protecting the other while simultaneously projecting threats across the board. It was my move, and the game had entered its final stages. Lucian's queen was uncomfortably close, radiating danger. I had only a few paths before me. The game was slipping from my grasp. I had two options: a risky knight sacrifice that could lead to a swift end, or to hunker down and hope for a draw. Sacrifice the knight. Bold sacrifice. Let's see how this plays out. If Lucian fell into the trap, I might manage to draw. If he saw through it, my loss was imminent. A sacrifice in vain, I accept. Lucian seized the opportunity, capturing my sacrificed knight and strengthening his position. My bold move backfired. Lucian's pieces closed in, trapping my king. It was checkmate. The game was over, and Lucian had won. Your strategy was superior, Lucian. I admit defeat. You played well, Mr. President. Better luck next time. Time well spent. We learn less from victories, though. Lucy and I slowly began to dismantle the chessboard, each piece carefully placed back into its protective casing. Lucian was high in spirits. His eye gleamed with a rare look of contentment. The high stakes and strategic intricacies of this game remind me of the trials I endured early in my career, although the situation there was rarely as black and white. You certainly know how to keep things interesting, Lucy, and your past seems to be a well-guarded secret. In a way, Chess prepared me for some of the challenges I faced. I was involved in some complex situations where every move could drastically alter the landscape. Complex situations, you'd say? Sounds like you've dealt with a lot of tough decisions. Indeed, Mr. President, my past isn't without its share of shadows. There was a time when I served in a capacity that wasn't so straightforward. I danced on a knife's edge, every step carrying deep consequences. Lucian's gaze dropped to his empty glass as he fell into a moment of quiet introspection. I certainly don't wish to delve into a matter that might unsettle you. I've reconciled with my past, sir. I don't shy away from sharing aspects of it with those who I trust. I can tell you that there were instances where I found myself in the midst of, let's call it, intelligence work. It was a complex dance rife with deception and shadows. So you were a spy. Sounds fascinating. Spy is a simplistic term, Mr. President. My past roles were, let's say, less than conventional. I served for the national interests of King Edmund. Much as I'd love to elaborate, I must take my leave. Thank you for the delightful match. Thank you, Lucian. The match was indeed captivating. I hope to play again soon, though I cannot promise the outcome will be any different for you. He smiled. Good night, Mr. President. As Lucian departed, I thought about what he told me. I learned a thing or two, but the man was more of a mystery than ever. Meeting with Albin Clavin on planned reforms. After a meeting with Gloria Torrey and further discussions with the party and my cabinet, it was time to talk to Albin Clavin to get the reformist wing to support the proposal. I also plan to finally present a more fleshed out proposal and declare our agenda to the party after our meeting. I walked into the left wing of the assembly and entered the quarters of the USP. Where I reached the meeting hall, I saw many of the members conversing inside. After taking a glimpse inside, I went back into the corridor to look for the office of Albin Clavin, which is around the back of the place. When I reached his room, I knocked on his door and entered. Mr. President, welcome. The whole room was surrounded by bookshelves, packed with files and papers. It was a small office, with books and dossiers lying on every corner. It felt claustrophobic. On his gesture, I took a seat. How is everything going, Mr. Clavin? It's been busy. The party has been working very hard, Mr. President. Thanks you for asking. How's it going for you in the palace? It's pretty tough. I can't imagine the work you're dealing with up there. Our team was disappointed by the veto of the Workers' Rights Act. We worked day and night for weeks. It would have boosted your public opinion too, Mr. President. And of course, there's no option for me to say that I would have gladly accepted it if you hadn't given all the money away to the illegal immigrants. Either way, your efforts were appreciated by the palace. Action would have gone farther than words. It seems the administration is taking a very pro-business approach. He poured himself some water and had a sip before continuing. Anyway, sir, let's not talk about the proposal. Thanks for coming here for my input, because there are some subjects where Gloria and I don't see eye to eye. I have to say that most of the progressives were already starting to warm up to you. Your attempt at changing the Constitution created quite a bit of excitement. One could dare to say an excitement that hasn't been felt since the 30s. Yet there are some issues with the current status of the draft proposal, so we may need to contain our excitement a little longer. I cannot support this in its current state. And what's the problem? Oh, where do we even begin? We have specifically asked for a change in appointment of ministers. This is where the party was expecting, yet I see that our suggestions were completely ignored. They were not ignored, Mr. Cliven. Excuse me, Mr. President, but how are they not ignored? I don't know what I can do for you. Even if I gave you my support, the party will not like this. Leave the rest of the party to me. I'm now asking for your support. Your proposal will be crushed like this anyway. I'd rather have something tangible to support. It seems you have interesting dreams, but dreams nonetheless. I would have understood your stance if this was the only issue. There are more. I thought there would be some reform about the extensive decree powers. He stared directly into my eyes. There isn't going to be reform about decrees. You should at least do something about the party's demand for minister reform. That's a no. That's a shame. He looked down at the proposal. There might still be a way for me to get behind this. That is not enough, Mr. President. We can take another look over the draft, or perhaps there is something else you could offer. This meeting's over. However you see it, Mr. President, I hope I didn't offend you in some way. I'm sorry to say that there's nothing I can do for you, Mr. President. Good luck with uniting the party under your reforms, but I guess you will be uniting the party against you like this, which is an achievement too, I guess. Anyway, I need to get back to work, Mr. President. I understand. I won't bother you any longer. That's not what I meant, sir. It's okay, Mr. Calvin. I took no offense. I left the room and went back into the corridor. The meeting had exhausted me. I went to the restaurant of the assembly to get something to eat while conversing with the other members of the party. I saw Albin talking to his people in the distance. After a while, the preparations for the conference began, and I went back into the conference hall and prepared my notes for the speech I was going to make. It took time to get all the present members of the party inside the hall. Gloria Toria announced me from the start. I walked up to the stand as everybody in the room started clapping. Brothers and sisters of United Swordland, I came here today to announce the agenda for the future of our country. I started my speech with the reasons of the changes to the Constitution. The people of Swordland have spoken. They blame our institutions and our systems. They want change. Can you blame the people? Haven't we had enough with the flaws of our Constitution? We must listen their wishes and get their trust in Swordland back. Pause as they started clapping and continued. talk about democracy. I brought attention to the democracy and why we must write a more democratic constitution. I explained how our proposal will fix the issues. Later, I explained the content of the new constitution and asked for their full support for the proposal. Ask for them to vote yes. I asked for each and every members vote to make a change together. There wasn't much reaction from the party. I saluted everybody in the room one last time and bid them farewell before leaving the stand. I walked out the assembly and back into the palace. It's not going to pass, and you know what? That's fine. Though I remember this finishing before that. This I don't remember going through until later. Oh well. What's in the news? President meets the USP. Today, President Rain has met his party members in the party meeting in the Grand National Assembly of Swordland, where the current situation of the country and future plans of the party were likely discussed. It was later reported that President Rain used the meeting to give a speech to the party and announced the content of the first draft of the new constitution. The details of the meeting were not made public, nor what the draft contained. Balance of power in Eastern Maricopa. Read the report. Infrastructure at full capacity in Ep.5. The bustling city of Ep.5 is facing infrastructure challenges as its airport and port facilities are at full capacity due to high volumes of logistics and tourist travel. The situation is raising concern over the ability to sustain the growing demand without causing delays and disruptions. Infrastructure expansion and modernization are being considered to resolve the issue. Ministry of Health discusses privatization. The Ministry of Health has begun work on a health report with a proposal to allow privatization in the health system to potentially generate new resources for the ministry. Minister Benawal is personally overseeing the discussion and the report with top aides, including members from the National Business Council. Alright, let's start with the news. Archaic state of Swordland's conscription law. Dear reader, I ask you this. What year are we in? 1880s? 1920s? The matter I'm writing about is, of course, mandatory military service again. In times where there are no active wars, why do we still need to have these archaic conscription laws? Let me answer that. It is because someone profits from it. Not only does this make the warmongering soulless happy, it also works out for large defense corporations. The oligarchs are now swimming in money, while we still have to send our children away when they come of age. We are in the modern age. If we want to modernize Swordland and catch up to the superpowers, if we want to lose this military identity so that we can intellectually prosper, mandatory conscription laws need to go. You know, I see nothing wrong with mandatory conscription, to be honest. I think they could help the United States to, if going through 4 years in the military is certainly an experience that could probably benefit most people in this country. Rain to meet with Smolak and Van Horten. Swordland is embarking on a great geopolitical gamble with the new trade initiative organized by the Minister of Foreign Affairs. The hope is the solidification of relations with the old ally Magnolia, and the troublesome neighbor Wayland, with the aim of regaining some of the regional diplomatic influence the country used to have. Each of these countries have different agendas, which will create some difficulties for the president. Prime Minister Van Horten, who was elected through a powerful democratic movement, wants to reimagine trade with Swordland, while President Smolak of Wayland is looking for new foreign investment and security cooperation against rebellious, bloodish movements at the border. Religious Harmony Bill. It doesn't cost any money. In an endeavor to promote religious harmony and unity, the Grand National Assembly introduces the Religious Harmony Bill to establish regulations for religious affairs across Swordland. Section 1 of the Religious Harmony Bill mandates that all sermons conducted during the Day of Dissension ceremony at the Arch Sanctuary of Deer will henceforth be held in the Swordish language. This move is aimed at promoting inclusivity and common understanding among worshippers. Section 2 of the RHB regulates the language of sermons in other sanctuaries across Swordland. It prohibits the use of Bloodish for sermons unless explicit approval has been obtained from the Archpriest of Swordland. This measure ensures Section 3 sets forth new regulations for priests seeking state-sanctioned positions. It requires that all applicants must have Swordish lineage and be eligible for their salaries and pensions. Yeah, vetoed. President Rain protects religious freedoms. President Rain has recently vetoed the outrageous Religious Harmony Bill. The bill was aiming to limit the freedoms of Bloodish people in Swordland. The MP to propose this bill was, of course, Casaro Kivner, the leader of the NFP himself. Mr. Kivner has never stopped his attacks on the Bloodish people, and we are sure that he will continue his racist onslaught as his attempts to further divide the country. President Rain's decision to veto this discriminatory bill, which was a clear attack on religious and personal freedoms, will be welcomed by Bloods and Swords alike. Alright, Arcasia offers aid. Arcasia Foreign Minister Laurent Martel has proposed an extensive aid package for Swordland. This package includes financial assistance, logistics support, and equipment aid. In return, Arcasia seeks refueling and repair access at Swordland's Ellery Air Force Base, in addition to occasional flyover rights in Swordish airspace. Yeah, I accept. Rain's weak international leadership. President Radical says one good thing about me, one bad thing about me. One good thing about me, one bad thing about me. President Rain's recent decision to accept a substantial aid package from Arcasia adds yet another dubious entry to his growing record of weak leadership decisions. This move, far from demonstrating a proactive response to Swordland's economic struggles, instead paints our nation as reliant and submissive, reflecting back on Swordland's proud history of robust leadership on the international stage. One can't help but mourn its apparent decline. The Arcasian deal, comprising financial assistance, logistical support, and equipment aid, appears at face value to be a boon for our struggling economy, yet it comes at the cost of granting Arcasia refueling and repair access in Swordland's Ellery Air Force Base, as well as occasional flyover rights in the Swordish airspace. In agreeing to such terms, Rain does more than just undermine our sovereignty. He risks Swordland's long-standing regional standing subjugating us to a powerful foreign entity like Arcadia. Such a move represents a stark departure from the vision of the independent, self-sufficient Swordland that many citizens still cherish. Our president attempts to align Swordland closer to Arcadia, and by extension the Arcadian Treaty Organization, is a gamble with Swordland's future. One can't help but question, is this the price we must pay for Rain's inability to keep our economy afloat? Look, the economy has only gotten better since I've taken charge. Briefing on the status of immigration regulations. Private party of the Gentlemen's Club. Villa of Peter Beck. I haven't talked to Peter in forever. Wasn't I supposed to chastise him a long time ago? Far from becoming accustomed to my workload as president, I only felt more and more snowed under as weeks passed. It has been ages since I had any time to myself. I was starting to lose my focus and my temper was growing increasingly thin. Peter was the first to realize I needed a break. After much cajoling, he finally persuaded me to come to a meeting of his new venture, the Gentlemen's Club. For the past few months, he'd been hosting a salon of sorts, now just for politicians and businessmen, but also for artists, entertainers, people of taste. He told me with a smile on his face. There was only one rule, no wives or girlfriends allowed, hence the name. And so I found myself in... Okay, that was loud. And so I found myself in front of his new luxury villa in Erleroy. Very loud jazz music emanated from inside. I waited and waited. Finally, Peter opened the door. I could smell the whiskey on his breath. Anton, finally. Now the real party can start. Come on in. As soon as I entered, Peter closed the door and turned to the small crowd. Gentlemen, a minute of your time, please. I now have the privilege to present you the man himself, the fourth president of Swordland, Mr. Anton Rain. I had known him for long enough to understand that he was more than a little drunk. He made an elaborate mock curtsy as I passed him and walked into the room. The music stopped, and I felt everyone's eyes on me. And I present you Peter Vectorn, the first alcoholic vice president of Swordland. My joke didn't sit well with Peter, nor the crowd. There was a short, awkward silence before he continued. Dear members, please give a warm welcome to our very special guest. If I may, Anton, here, take this. He handed me a glass of whiskey and put his hand on my shoulder. We all know why we're gathering here tonight, to celebrate life, to have a brief escape from our tumultuous profession. I personally don't know any better cure for stress than a little drink. Only a little one? A few people in the crowd chuckled, and some raised their glasses. Now the tradition dictates that as club president, I have to remind you of our house rules. There are 3. No politics, no wives, and no one sober. Cheers. Peter drank the whiskey in his glass in one go. Sip your whiskey. Anton Rain might have the power to make presidential decree, but I, Peter Vectorn, president of this club, now declare this party started. Music go. The band started up again. After greeting the crowd around me, I felt a hand on my shoulder. Let me show you around. We walked through the corridors of his mansion. Statues and paintings lined the stark white walls. All arched windows provided a view of the neatly manicured grounds, complete with a swimming pool. A grand lesbian marble staircase led up to the second story. Peter gestured at the massive crystal chandelier hanging overhead. That chandelier was made in the 18th century. Can you believe it? There's even a hedge maze in the garden. And how are you paying for all of this? I'll let you in on a secret. Gus Manger has a lot of contacts in real estate. He brokered an amazing price for me. He'll also be here tonight, by the way. Why am I not surprised, Gus? The wheeler and dealer would be right at home at a party like this. Perfect. I've been looking for a chance to speak with him about investment. What did you promise him in return? Living in a lavish mansion while my country suffers is not... What did you promise him in return? Only my money. We continued walking until we circled back to where we had started. So what do you think of my little hideaway? Frankly, I find it disgusting. Jealous, are we? Like I said, you could have a place just like this. Anyway, let's get back to the party. I arranged for some caviar to be brought in from Lesbia. You're going to love it. He opens the door to the main hall and we rejoin the other guests. The music was louder now and the mood decidedly more inebriated. Cocktail waitresses were carrying around plates of canopies and wearing dresses that left little to their imagination. So this is what you've been hiding from Evelyn. No one is hiding anything. She knows how important it is for men like us to blow off steam once in a while. He averted his gaze for a second before calling over one of the waitresses. She was in her mid-20s, wearing red lipstick. Her blonde hair neatly tied in a ponytail. On her plate were toast points slathered in Lesbian caviar Peter had mentioned. I took a bite. It was rich, salty, tasting of pure seaside. I could almost hear the sound of the waves and seagulls. Lesbian caviar, best in the world, I'm telling you, Anton. There are few pleasures in life that are this. As the waitress left us to serve another attendee, she flashed a quick smile at Peter over her shoulder. He smiled back, a little too broadly. Sensual. His eyes were still fixed on her with an expression I remembered from our many nights together as a student. Oh, look, there's Gus. Why don't you go talk to him? I'll be back in a minute. Peter, I'm warning you, don't make a mistake. What are you talking about? I'm just going to the washroom. See you shortly. Gus Major was standing next to a couple of men that I recognized as banking industry magnates. As I approached, all of them turned to me and bowed their head. Mr. President, a toast to our new member, everyone. Gus and I clinked our glasses as the people around us raised theirs. I heard this mansion is a result of your connections. That's right, I do have a wide network in real estate. Peter told me a couple of weeks ago that you might be interested in potential opportunities such as, well, this. He opened his arms, gesturing at an opulent surrounding. Let's take a walk. The balcony has an amazing view of Erleroy. We left the room and made our way to the balcony. On the way, he took out 2 cigars and held one out for me. I turned the cigar down. Gus lit up his own and started smoking. We went out to the balcony. All of Erleroy was at our feet. From this vantage point, I was able to see how expensive the building plot was. The swimming pool and hedge maze were visible from here. Leaning over the railing, I admired the view for a moment before Gus spoke up. I know you're wondering about the deal Peter made. In a nutshell, thanks to my network, he was able to procure this house for half the asking price, which would have been impossible under any other circumstance. I would be delighted to discuss a similar arrangement with you. In fact, I have prepared a document with my own personal favorite opportunities. Your willingness to invest in Gassam showed you were a man after my own heart. I'd love to talk about how my network can benefit you personally. I'm not looking to make investments at the moment. Real estate is the best investment anyone can make. With the current economic situation, it only makes sense to put your money into such a tangible asset. But I also have a few other opportunities for you to make a side profit if real estate doesn't interest you. Is there any chance I can convince you? No, that's my final answer. Very well, I won't push further. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to refresh my drink. See you around. He left to rejoin the party. Alone on the balcony, I looked out over Erleroy. Suddenly, I heard a rustling from the hedge maze below. I looked down and saw a silhouette. 2 silhouettes, actually. So close together, they seemed to be entangled. I squinted and tried to get a better look. It was definitely 2 people kissing, but I couldn't see either of their faces. I returned to the party and spent some time mingling with the other guests, engaging them in small talk and their business. Their children, their relationships. I realized it had been a while since Peter left. I looked around, but couldn't find him. Instead, my eyes landed on Ewald Alfonso. With a smile, the former president walked over to meet me. Mr. Alfonso, I didn't know you were a member of Peter's club. I'm not. Gus and I were having a business dinner, and he convinced me to come along afterwards. I saw you speaking to Mr. Manger earlier. Just briefly, I was interested in what he was. He seems used to making deals with sitting presidents, but he and I won't be going into business. We talked, yes. It's always nice to get to know one's ministers outside of the Marin Palace. We talked, yes. It's always nice to get to know one's ministers outside the Marin Palace. We had a good chat together back in Narbel, as I recall, resulting in your very wise decision to invest Sordish money in Gazan. We're seeing growing interest from the international investors, and by the way, I'm optimistic about the results of Sordenland's investment. I'm glad Sorland could help your company thrive. And vice versa. Just then, Peter came up from behind us and threw an arm around each of our shoulders. Look at you two. Swordland's bright future and its ancient, ancient past. My apologies, Mr. Alfonso. My vice president's had a bit too much to drink. Pardon me, Mr. President, but I've had exactly enough. Well, Mr. Alfonso, have you been enjoying my hospitality? Alfonso smiled politely. Indeed I have, Mr. Vectorn. You've put together one hell of a gathering. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to have a quick word with the CEO of the Sordish Petroleum. He's here too? What a party. Alfonso gave a brusque wave and walked off. Peter shifted his weight unsteadily. Nice guy. A shitty president, but a nice guy. Was that you in the hedge maze, Peter? What are you talking about? I'll be direct. Were you with the waitress? What? No, no. How could you even think that? I'm a married man. Peter, you know you can tell me anything. I thought I saw his cheerful expression slip for a moment. Yeah, I know. Trust me, it's nothing. Now, who wants a drink besides me, of course? I woke up the next day with a pounding headache and more than a few regrets. My recollection of the evening were hazy, but there was one important detail that kept coming back to me. The red lipstick on Peter's collar. But maybe my memory was playing tricks on me. BFF and Bloodish Education in Bergia. Governor Felix Braun reports the discovery of Bloodish Freedom Front propaganda in most schools that teach in the Bloodish language. This highlights the BFF efforts to recruit and radicalize young people in Bloodish majority areas. The government is urged to take immediate action to address the BFF's recruitment strategy and prevent further radicalization of young people. Governor Braun asked lawmakers to introduce a ban on the Bloodish language as a primary education language, and asked the government to properly enforce the national language of Swordland to everyone. Privatization in education. The new privatization plan of the Ministry of Education is in full swing, and the first dozen public schools have transitioned into for-profit organizations already after a public bidding process determined by the buyers. Minister of Education Sierra Walda said that only a small percentage of all institutes will be allowed to transition. It is expected that the ministry will gather a substantial amount of private funds from the initiative. Condemnation from United Cortana. United Cortana has voiced its disapproval of the financial accord between Swordland and Arcadia, criticizing President Rain for inviting the ATO to meddle in the affairs of Eastern Mocopa. In a firm stance against perceived Arcadian imperialism, the chairman has vowed to defend the sphere of influence of the CSP. BFF poisons Swordish schools. A wasted opportunity for rural development. The government's decision not to invest in Gurnai's rural development investment plan is being viewed by many outsiders as a missed opportunity. The plan had the potential to bolster our rural economies and secure the nation's food sustainability. Its dismissal raises questions about the government's commitment to our Arcarian communities. Peter Vectorin throws lavish party. Vice President Peter Lectern threw lavish party in his new $1.5 million SR 3-story Ellery mansion, which was attended by high-profile businessmen and politicians, including President Rain and the Minister of Rural Development, Gus Manger, according to our sources from the Old Capitol. According to the reports, guests arrived in elegant suits and dresses for the swanky affair in the evening, but the Vice President and the President was nowhere to be seen at the entrance of the huge mansion. Nonetheless, it's worrying that Rain and Vector are throwing parties and having hidden meetings during the economic recession with so much trouble surrounding our nation. Swordland accepts aid from Arcadia. Yep. That happened. Read report. HSU fire investigation suspended. A lack of further evidence from the investigation into the fire that occurred at the Wholesword State University Archives has caused the case to be suspended until further notice from the police and SID. The cordon has been lifted. Oh, that investigation took a while and got nowhere. We were in the middle of a meeting in the palace about our immigration policy. The ensuing discussion quickly became heated. I don't think so, Mr. Whiskey. It just doesn't make any sense to me that a foreign citizen should come before a Swordish citizen in Swordland. Well said. My analysis is also in line with this, especially during the economic recession. We are giving Swordish jobs to migrants from other countries. What about our own people? Immigrants are the reason our economy is not completely unsalvageable. Look at Agnolian immigrants in England. They have revitalized the whole region and in turn boosted the economy of the entire country. Simon can attest to that. Statistically speaking, allowing immigrants to become part of the workforce contributes to our economy, but I agree that the current situation is very nuanced. With that said, we can't just tighten our immigration policy and expect the economy to stay the same. We need to put our economy and the recession at the forefront. Thankfully, we have just started receiving financial aid from Arcadia. And then what? We'll become their servants? First, they will place their warplanes in Erlery, then their armies will come, you will see. I do not approve of this decision at all. I've done this with Swordfish citizens in mind, nothing else. That's how they take over countries, you know. Mr. Lindsay has a point. We have seen it happen many times. Gentlemen, can we please get back on topic? Right, sorry, Mr. Whiskey. As I was just saying before I was interrupted, look at the superpowers. Do you see them closing off their borders? Why do you think their economies are in such good shape? They are in their current state because they welcome immigration and use it to their advantage. Swordfish citizens must come first. Exactly, our citizens should never be threatened by foreigners. We need a decision, but before we move on, Mr. President, do you have any questions about the current state of immigration? How do immigrants usually arrive here? There are three major paths they choose. The first one is the Aglan to Agnolia border. The second is the Bergia to Wayland border, and the third is the Lauren coast. Agnolians are the largest group. It's a light border over there, although recently political fugitives from Vogsland have been crossing the Grey Sea by boat to land in our coast. Politically persecuted Weezik refugees tend to use the dangerous mountain passes at the Wayland border. Many of them also have bloodish blood. This is significantly increasing the blood populace inside Bergia. What is the current legal status of immigrants? Currently, all accepted immigrants are given a work permit on arrival so that they can work and can contribute to the economy of Swordland. There is currently no limit on the number of immigrants accepted. However, the number has remained stable over the past years. Despite the laws, the fact is many immigrants illegally work for corporations. That is the main issue with immigration right now, not the immigration itself. Nonsense. If not for the unlimited amount of immigration, we wouldn't be in this state. How many immigrants live in Swordland? Official numbers show that we have anywhere between 2 to 3 million immigrants residing in Swordland. Even excluding the countless undocumented aliens in our midst, that is a very substantial amount. The primary issue is the strife they cause between less fortunate Swordfish citizens and themselves. Including them in the workforce would benefit everybody, including unemployed swords. More taxes means more service. Let's move on and see what can be done about the immigration situation. Very well. David Whiskey opened his dossier, stamped with the seal of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Before we make a decision, I have to remind you. During the election, we promised to tighten immigration laws. Of course, as you know, I was, and still am, against it. I agree with David. We can turn immigration to our advantage from a financial standpoint. Advantage, you should go over the amount of disadvantage caused by immigrants. I can provide you with a report from my ministry later. Believe me, it would surprise you. We need to keep our promises and focus on our own citizens. That is what I think. David sighed warily. This is going nowhere. I'm ready to make a decision. Yes. Everyone leaned forward, eager to hear the response. We will tighten our immigration laws. It is unfortunate to see Swordland move in this direction, but I trust you have good intentions. I'll move ahead with the implementation. This has the chance to affect our trade negotiations with Agnolia negatively. They expect us to respect the flow of people. Indeed, it will be challenging to convince these countries as they see our borders close. Not only that, we've already slighted Wayland in the past. They might see this as a return to the 30s, which will definitely affect our negotiations. I wouldn't worry about that too much with how Wayland is dealing with the bloodish terrorist. I would argue that President Smolak would beg us to tighten our immigration. With that said, I don't fancy Wayland as a partner since they are as reliable as a flopping fish out of water. I'm against isolationism. It's the wrong path. This is not about isolating Swordland, it's about protecting it. This will isolate us in every way. The more we are connected to the world, the better. The world is entering the age of globalization. This decision will make us stay behind. Anything else that needs to be said? I want everybody here to get used to new changes. This is our new direction. The ministers gathered their documents and rose from their chairs, some with frowns on their faces. I'm looking forward to the upcoming trade talks, Peter, and I have been visiting Stallport and I can't say that. I should be able to say that, but I can't. In preparation. I'll be coming along to talk with the economy minister, looking forward to the potential partnership. If we are finished, I need to head off and get the ministry to work on the new policy. Same here. Our border units need to be informed and prepared. Yes, we are finished. The ministers depart. Surely somebody's going to talk about my horrible decision. A huge step backwards in ending the recession. Freedom in education choice. The new privatization initiative has allowed many middle-income households to pay for better education in their districts. Swordland tightens up immigration. The series of latest policy changes enacted by President Rain to tighten immigration has caused condemning responses from the international community, with the exception of Wayland in the region. Read the report. Central Bank drafts economic recovery proposal. In an effort to mitigate economic damages, Whole Sword's Central Bank is working on a new proposal. The plan comprises several measures, including the accumulation of foreign exchange reserves, the adoption of a cautious fiscal policy, and increased support for export-oriented industries. The bank's initiatives forms a crucial part of the broader strategy to stabilize Swordland's economy. Which, look at that, it's going up. Galcondis rally against Swordland. Bogsland warns against swordish privatization. What? The country's talking to me about our country's privatization, huh? Chancellor Emmerich Hegel has voiced his concerns over potential privatization measures being considered in Swordland. The Chancellor, a strong proponent of Voxlandian socialism, cautioned against the dangers of unchecked capitalism, citing the risk of increasing wealth inequality and social instability. He expressed a desire for Swordland to consider a more equitable approach to economics. Piss off, mate. Wayland condemns Arcasian financial aid. President Smolak has condemned Swordland for accepting financial aid from Arcasia. He said that cooperating with Arcasia will only bring trouble to the region and warned Swordland from falling into the trap of the West's neo-colonialist agenda. Smolak also blames Arcasian President Dwight Walker for trying to dominate eastern Mokopa and exploit its resources. Chancellor Inos Indrumir emphasizes neutrality. Chancellor Inos has publicly voiced support for Swordland's sovereignty amidst ongoing attempts by superpower alliances to exert influence. Kairut, with its long-standing policy of neutrality, underscores the value of independent decision-making for Swordish nation and advocates for peace, stability, and non-interference in international affairs. Well, thank you for your neutral opinion that I should be neutral. Very neutral of you. Okay, the opening of the Ep.5 festival. Our motorcade slowly made its way towards the magnificent Ep.5 High Arts Center. Night was falling and the festivities were about to begin. I flipped through the brochure that had been given to us at the hotel. Monica's face was featured on the front page, but the schedule on the inside still said that Curtin Lestat, mayor of Enrica, would be making the opening remarks. My last-minute announcement that my wife would be replacing Curtin must have caused some confusion on the print shop. The Ep.5 festival was one of the biggest events of the year. It originally marked the start of the annual religious pilgrimage, a weeks-long journey still undertaken by devout Nuris, but today it was better known as a cultural celebration that drew thousands of revelers to the city. There were film screenings, concerts, theaters, dance performances, art exhibitions, and celebrity-studded nightly galas. The opening ceremonies were broadcast on TV and watched by millions. As the car slowed, a throng of reporters and security guards rushed to meet us. I turned my attention to Monica. She nervously eyed the waiting crowd. Don't worry, you're going to be fine. She gave me a smile, looking somewhat comforted. Thanks, Anton. I appreciate it. As soon as Sergei opened the door, we were enveloped by the roar of the crowd. The next few minutes were a blur of handshakes, photos, and reporters' questions. The onlookers cheered as we walked the red carpet to the newly built art center. We followed the guards through the cavernous white halls until we came to a set of arched doors leading to the auditorium. We waited outside as security did a quick sweep of the area, then headed in. So this is it. I will finally stand on the same platform as you. A platform where Swordland's women will have their voices heard and acknowledged for the first time. Good luck. The two of us proceeded to the podium. I spoke first, delivering a short paragraph about the importance of Ep.5 and the festival to Swordland. I then introduced Monica. Thunderous applause echoed around the auditorium as she stepped to the microphone. I exited the stage and found my seat right next to Curtin Lestat. Ladies and gentlemen, as the First Lady of Swordland, I welcome all of you to the Ep.5 Festival. The crowd erupted again, clapping and cheering. Curtin Lestat leaned over and hissed into my ear. Mr. President, I'm afraid you have made a great mistake. There will be consequences. Are you threatening me, Curtin? No, I'm merely telling you what will happen. Your little stunt has lost you my support in the assembly. I kept my eyes on the stage. When the applause subsided, Monica resumed her speech. This festival holds a very important place in all of our hearts. It is a celebration of art, music, theater, but above all, it's a celebration of the people of Ep.5, of their free and open-minded spirit. As we all unite for the festivities, we must not forget the values that have inspired them. Today marks the beginning of the Week of the Spirit, a time for vitality, growth, and new beginnings. The crowd was hanging on to her every word, but the mayor of Enrica and his entourage didn't seem as impressed. I stand on this podium today to speak about change, about a new beginning for our society. Swordland calls itself a free country, yet half of its citizens are still barred from enjoying the same freedom that the other half takes for granted. I refer to myself and my fellow women. A rumble went through the crowd, scattered applause mixed with murmurs of discontent. To truly move forward, we must make a break from old traditions that strive toward equality for all, equal rights, equal pay, equal access to education. Enough! The entire hall fell silent. The mayor Enriquez rose and spoke. I will not let this woman besmirch the traditions upon which our great country was built. Mr. Lestat, please sit down. No, Anton, I can no longer sit idly by. We are past that point. Curtin turned towards the audience, speaking loudly enough to be heard without a microphone. Mr. Rain, what right do you possibly have to pass judgment on our values as Swedish citizens? You are not a politician, you are not a speaker, you are merely a... Miss Rain, sorry. You are merely a woman who's lucky enough to be married to the president. Your place is not at this podium, it's at a home tending to your husband and children. The crowd was growing rowdier. Some booed and jeered at Curtin's words, others whooped in approval. Monica froze completely. The audience grew louder. I had to do something. I walked up to the stage and stood beside my wife at the podium. The mayor was still standing defiantly in the front row. Mr. Lestat, do I have to teach you basic manners? Have you forgotten what you learned in kindergarten? The crowd erupted in laughter. Curtin's face turned red. I will not stand idly by as our Swedish values are being tested, especially by our very own president and his harlot of a wife. That's the last straw, Curtin. Get out of my sight immediately. Mr. President, this is a free country. I refuse to leave. The two of us glared angrily at each other. Ordered the guards to kick him out. I ordered the guards to kick Curtin out. My security guards immediately surrounded Curtin and his entourage. How dare you? To a member of the assembly, to a member of your own party. As he was being dragged out of the venue, his voice echoed in the hall. You'll pay for this, Anton. I swear on my name. Do you hear me? You will pay. The door closed behind him. The crowd began to whisper. Having regained her composure, Monica stepped back behind the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, this incident only serves to demonstrate how visibly divided our country is today. My intention was not to offend or harm anyone. It is unfortunate that even the mention of modern ideals still does not resonate with many in Swordland. I hope we can set aside our differences one day and walk towards a happier, brighter future for all us Swordland citizens, male and female alike. We must all remember that this future cannot exist without the past, and I believe we're witnessing the meeting of our glorious past and our bright future right here in Ep.5 today. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to officially open the Ep.5 Festival, a Morgana Westcore. Beck turns this die. Most of the audience finished the decades-old saying, but nervous whispers still emanated around the room. The opening event was finally finished, but my troubles with Curtin were not. I let Monica and my entourage know we'd be flying straight back to Holsword. I was in for yet another sleepless night. Yeah, so that happened. We're going to wrap up this episode here. After the very contentious speech made by my wife, I knew trouble would come from that. However, it had to be done. Anyway, I'm James Johnson, aka Softwareblade. This is my content. Hopefully you're enjoying it. If so, please smash that like button. Consider subscribing. And until the next time, all peace.